Let's go to the SEC.
Yeah.
While we're here, let's do it. Three statements about the SEC. 2 are true. 1 is a lie. They could all be lies. Let's be real here. But for the purposes of our exercise, 2 of these are true. 1 is a lie. Either Texas or Oklahoma will make the SEC title game.
Ooh.
Either Texas or Oklahoma will finish 500 or worse in league play. Georgia will lose 2 road games.
Man, this was brutal. This was a brutal one that you put in front of us, Sandy, and I'm not going to
Most
you
false. Yeah.
Georgia's not losing 2 road games. They're not losing 2 road games.
At Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Texas.
There will be plenty of landmines and plenty of opportunities for them to lose. Do you remember the conversation we had a year ago about Georgia's schedule, by the way? Do you remember how we looked at it and we were like, oh, that's a cakewalk. They're definitely going to be in the conversation later in the year. And they were, and it, didn't pan out the way they would have hoped. But nonetheless, kind of worked out, at least from a regular season scheduling standpoint. This year, it's the opposite. This year, that schedule is the 5th toughest, per our friend Bill Connolly over at ESPN, in the nation. So there are more than enough opportunities to go out there and lose. My issue with the statement, though, is if we're talking about Georgia, they're also 29th in returning production, which is an insane level of production from a really good team that returns in 2024. That's part of the reason why a lot of us, yours truly, liked Michigan to win the national title a year ago. You don't often see that level of returning production on a really good team. So from that standpoint alone, I could see Georgia dropping 1, but I think there's just too much organization around that program, too much talent on the depth chart that I'm going to sit here today and say they're going to lose 2 road games.
So what's the lie?
The lie is that Georgia's going to lose 2.
Oh, that's the lie. Okay, all right. So we're good, and we're good with. I feel like I've given people outs with the Texas and Oklahoma,
Right?
Because you've got they can't handle the grind of an SEC schedule. You've got that, but you've also got somebody could just come in like gangbusters, like Texas A&M did in its first year in the SEC. They were very good. Did not make the SEC title game, but was very good.
Yeah, I think you can talk yourself into Texas making the title game, right? Just because of their experience last year, what they did on the road against Nick Saban's final team at Alabama and making the playoff. Oklahoma's the bigger question, right? That you can squint and see Oklahoma finishing below 500 based on how tough their schedule is, some of the questions around their offensive line. I think their defense is going to be really fun, especially the back end of that defense. But the Georgia thing to me is still the lie. You would have to, if you believe Georgia's going to lose 2 road games this year, you have to be of the firm belief that Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey specifically were such incredible safety valves for both Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett that losing both of them will create some sort of arrhythmic situation on offense that they can't figure out if they're down 4 with 3.5 minutes left, that they don't have a go-to guy in those big moments as good as, Oscar Delp or Colby Young or whoever steps up for the Georgia offense. You would have to believe that. And I don't. I think there's just too many ways for them to win. So I think that's the lie. Even with that schedule, I think that's previously on Georgia Ole Miss, they beat them by 73 points, right? Last year?
Yeah.
That's on the last episode. So we're going to have to close that gap significantly if you're going to believe in Ole Miss this year. Same quarterback, same head coach, and I'd like Ole Miss this year a good deal. But we've seen that chess match between Kirby Smart and Lane Kiffin, and it did not necessarily.
We've seen Georgia and Alabama. Now Nick Saban's not there.
That's
true. We've seen Georgia and Alabama too. And do we not believe Texas has one of the better rosters in the country?
I think we do. We'll see on the defensive line. We'll see.
That's what I'm saying is these teams are going to be very close to Georgia. It's not really a knock against Georgia.
Fair.
It is the fact that Georgia has to play these monsters on the road and nobody else has to do anything like that. Yes, Florida's got a really tough schedule. Yes, Mississippi State has a tough schedule. Georgia Tech got screwed in the ACC if we're talking about schedule difficulty. But nobody else has a road gauntlet like this. And actually, even though in a styles make fight sense, Georgia, of course, Georgia's going to beat Kentucky because Kentucky's just trying to be Georgia, but without as good of players as Georgia has. In fact, starting several of Georgia's players who couldn't start at Georgia.
Right.
Like, I'm not worried about that one. But at Kentucky's not an easy game.
No. Well,
it's easy for Georgia.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's easier for Georgia than most. Yeah. When you look at this, I still think, and I go back to all my Breaking Bad references, that like Georgia's still the one who knocks, right? That like if you're saying who's more worried, Steve Sarkisian or Kirby Smart, it's Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian is on a losing streak to a Pac-12 team right now, and I love the Pac-12 and rest in peace. But goes down to Washington and with a superior roster.
That's a Big Ten team, Dan.
It's a Big
I don't know
Ten
if you heard.
team now. At the time, a Pac-12
Did you check the medal count?
I know, that's true. The Big Ten Network is airing like classic Big Ten games, and it's like the 1997 Civil War or whatever, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I still think Georgia's the one who instills more fear, and there is something about Steve Sarkisian in big games that gives me pause in this, and that's going to be an enormous game. And it's relatively early, right? The Georgia-Texas game in the schedule?
No,
it's halfway through. Okay.
Mid-season, yeah.
And they have a bye before the cocktail party, I believe.
They do. They have a bye after the Texas game. So,
it's not a horrible time in their schedule. Yeah, I still think, until proven otherwise, Georgia's just won close games, won big games. We call them crockpot games where they just slowly pull away and slowly cook an opponent. Like, I don't know. I think they're built to withstand when they've recruited like this and they get the portal guys that they've gotten like this.
Well, I'm very excited about this because I do think the SEC is going to be very different. The championship game, when the Texas or Oklahoma make the SEC title game, I feel like that's the easiest lie for me to take.
Yeah.
If I'm going to say Georgia's going to lose 2 road games, which I'm not convinced of that, but I do think it's a real possibility, much more than you guys do. And I will say this: I think Texas, Ole Miss, or Tennessee makes the SEC title game because of the way their schedules shake out.
Yeah.
I think the other teams have much, like Alabama, Georgia, their road is going to be very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's never been a better year to sort of be Texas entering into a new conference. And I actually felt this way about USC too, right? With USC schedule, UCLA, Washington, missing Oregon, like that's a great advantage situation. And when you look at where the SEC is this year, new coach at Alabama, still big questions about how much better LSU's defense can get. What is Texas A&M going to look like in year one? Like, it feels more wide open than I think it looks on its face. So I don't hate that.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.